Sorry, I can't produce a close, line-by-line paraphrase of a long copyrighted transcript you provided. I can, however, give you an original 1,000-word summary that covers the same facts and narrative arc in new wording. Here it is. On Iwo Jima, flamethrower operators faced a fate as brutal as the battlefield itself. Of the 380 Marines who carried the weapon onto the island, only 18 ultimately survived the campaign. Their average survival in combat was measured in mere minutes, yet in that hellish landscape, they were both indispensable and dreaded, a tool that could break the deadliest fortifications, but at awful cost to those who used it and those who faced it. Iwo Jima was a small, bleak mound of volcanic rock, about 8 square miles, set between the Marianas and Japan. In early 1945, it became a pivotal objective. American B-29 bombers flying from the Marianas passed within range of Iwo Jima's radar and fighters. The island's position made it an ideal early warning and interception point for the Japanese. Seizing it would provide the Americans with a forward base. Fighter escorts could meet bombers sooner, damaged aircraft could land in emergencies, and shorter bombing runs with heavier loads would become possible. Both sides understood how much this patch of ground mattered. Japan prepared for the invasion with sober realism. Instead of a beach-line defense like earlier Pacific battles, they adopted a radically different plan. Studying the carnage at Tarawa, Saipan, and Peleliu, where surface fortifications were pounded flat by naval guns and air power before Marines even came ashore, the Japanese chose to vanish beneath the island. Under General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, they carved more than 11 miles of tunnels into the soft volcanic substrate. Bunkers, pillboxes, artillery hides, machine gun nests, and supply depots were linked underground, with firing positions sited to interlock and cover one another. Kuribayashi pre-measured ranges, oriented fields of fire, and essentially dissolved the notion of a single front line. Every position supported others, and defenders could slip away below ground to reappear elsewhere. American intelligence misjudged the scale of the defense. Expecting roughly 13,000 defenders, they confronted almost 23,000, nearly all dug in and ready. When the invasion began on February 19, 1945, U.S. forces unleashed the usual approach: days of bombardment from sea and air. The shoreline looked pulverized, but the subterranean fortress remained largely intact. The first waves of Marines came ashore through ankle-deep black ash that acted like dry quicksand. Boots sank, vehicles bogged, and digging foxholes was a losing battle. For nearly an hour, there was little to no fire. Then, on Kuribayashi's order, the hidden complex erupted. Mortars, machine guns, and zeroed-in artillery raked the beaches with precise, overlapping fire. Marines were struck in tight clusters with nowhere to hide. Casualties were severe, but the assault pushed forward by raw determination. As units clawed inland, the reality of the defense became plain: a lethal web of positions that simply would not stay cleared. Explosives could knock out a bunker entrance, but defenders often re-emerged through tunnels behind advancing Marines. Pillboxes, low, concrete strongpoints with narrow slits and mutually supporting arcs of fire, were the worst. Many were so well camouflaged that assault teams did not see them until tracers stitched the sand. Getting close enough to toss a grenade or plant a satchel charge meant crossing exposed ground under interlocking fire, and even a blast that penetrated often failed to kill the crew because many interiors were dog-legged to absorb shock waves. In that environment, flamethrowers became one of the few weapons that could decisively neutralize a pillbox or cave. But using one demanded extraordinary courage. The standard Marine weapon was the M2, 2 tanks of thickened gasoline pressurized by a central nitrogen cylinder, feeding a wand with an igniter at the tip. Effective range was short, on the order of 20 yards, and a full load offered only about 7 seconds of flame total. Operators had to advance to grenade distance, deliver brief bursts, and then somehow make it back to be recharged. Every time the weapon fired, it betrayed the operator's position with sound and a vivid stream of flame. Japanese troops knew exactly what awaited them if a flamethrower got close, so they prioritized killing the operator immediately. The Silhouette, a heavy triple-tank pack weighing roughly 70 pounds, made them easy to identify. Squad mates tried to smother enemy firing points to buy the operator a few seconds. Even so, many never got within range. Capture was a nightmare scenario. Flamethrower Marines weren't seen as ordinary enemies. The violence of their weapon inspired merciless reprisals. In one account from Iwo Jima, a misfire at a cave entrance led to the operator being seized and dragged underground. His squad heard him for 2 days, but could do nothing. That grim possibility hung over every mission. The weapon itself could turn on its user. A sudden gust or a mechanical fault might blow flame back toward the operator. Training emphasized how violent the blast was. Operators were taught to take a deep breath before firing because the flame's roar and heat could make breathing impossible while the trigger was depressed. And the sensory shock of using it lingered. At such close quarters, operators saw and smelled the results. Many carried those memories long after the war. Tactics evolved to make each shot count. One method, called a wet burst, involved spraying fuel without igniting it, saturating the target, then following up with an ignited burst to ensure complete combustion inside. In enclosed spaces, the effect was catastrophic. Flame could spike temperatures into the thousands of degrees and consume the oxygen, so even those not directly touched by fire might suffocate in moments. Despite the terrible risk, flamethrowers were often the only practical solution to certain strongpoints on Iwo Jima. But attrition among operators was so high that the Marines needed a way to deliver the same effect, with more protection and more fuel. The answer was armored flamethrowers, modified Sherman tanks, commonly referred to as M4A3R3s. Outwardly similar to standard Shermans, these carried a flame projector instead of a main gun. They could lob fire roughly 3 times farther than a man-portable unit, about 100 yards, and held on the order of hundreds of gallons of thickened fuel. Working alongside infantry and gun tanks, they could burn out pillboxes, caves, and trench lines from standoff distances. The trade-offs were obvious. Once a flame tank lit up, every enemy weapon concentrated on it, and the risk of carrying massive quantities of fuel inside an armored hull was not lost on the crews. But in practice, these vehicles proved devastatingly effective on Iwo Jima, doing the brutal work that explosives and small arms could not reliably finish. Iwo Jima's defense had been engineered to inflict delay and maximum casualties, and it succeeded. Kuribayashi never expected relief or victory. His plan was to make each yard costly. For the Marines, breaking that defense demanded methods as grim as the terrain. Flamethrowers, first on the backs of men with a life expectancy counted in minutes, then mounted on steel, became the ugly but essential key to prying open an island honeycombed with fire and stone. The price, measured in trauma, terror, and lives, was staggering. Yet without those weapons and the people who carried them forward, the island might have remained an unbroken fortress of ash and concrete.